It started with a sound I hadn't heard in months, her laughter. Not the lazy, obligatory kind she'd give me when I cracked a joke. This was something else. Sharper. Real. I was upstairs, just out of the shower, towel around my waist, when I heard it drift through the window, carried on the warm April breeze. It came from the backyard. Our backyard. And it wasn't alone. I moved to the window, peeled back the curtain like I was afraid of what I'd see, and yeah, I should have been. She was down there, drink in hand, barefoot in the grass, wearing that blue sundress I always liked. The one she used to save for our anniversaries. And she was leaning, not sitting, leaning on some guy in a gray button-up shirt. Tall. Tan. Laughing with her like they'd known each other for years. He was holding her wrist. Not in a way that could be explained as innocent. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stood there and watched them, half expecting her to notice me and jump back like she'd been caught. But she didn't. She knew I was home. My car was in the driveway. And yet, there she was, openly flirting in the backyard like it was hers alone. Like I was the stranger in her story. I got dressed fast. Nothing dramatic. No storming down the stairs. No shouting. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed a beer from the fridge, hers, not mine, and stepped outside. Her eyes flicked to me just for a second. Not wide with guilt. Not surprised. She didn't even flinch. Just looked back at him and said, "Oh, hey babe. You remember Josh from work, right?" Josh. From work. That was her line. That was the best she had. The man who was touching her wrist like he owned it. I didn't answer. I walked over, real slow, took a seat in the patio chair across from them. My beer cracked open with a hiss that felt louder than it should have. "You're home early," she said, still not looking at me. "Yeah," I said. "Thought we could have dinner. But I see you've already got company." Josh smiled at me. Tight, polite smile. He had no idea who I was, or maybe he did and just didn't care. Either way, it made me want to ask him how long they'd been laughing in my backyard while I worked overtime to keep the lights on in our house. "Josh was just leaving," she said. Not to him, to me, like she was managing a schedule. Josh looked confused, then annoyed, then got up without another word. He didn't say goodbye to her. He didn't say anything to me. He just left, and the silence he left behind was thick with something ugly. She didn't apologize, didn't explain, just picked up her drink, drained the last of it and said, "You're being dramatic." That's when I knew something was broken. Not cracked, not strained, broken. Because a normal person would try to talk, defend, deflect something. She didn't. She was done pretending. The mask had dropped. I stood up, walked over to her. Not close enough to scare her, just enough to make her look at me. Really look. And I said, "You know what's funny? You used to be good at lying. Now you don't even bother." She rolled her eyes. Rolled her eyes. That was the first real confrontation. That's how it started. No screaming. No name-calling. Just her indifference. Her calm, casual betrayal like it was no big deal. Like it was a Tuesday. And I realized in that moment she wasn't hiding it anymore because she didn't care if I found out. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I sat in the kitchen at 6 a.m. sharp, staring at the spot where she usually stood making her smoothie, strawberries, almond milk, 2 scoops of collagen like clockwork. I waited. She came down half an hour later, phone in hand, still wearing the oversized t-shirt she used to steal from my drawer like it meant something. She saw me sitting there and paused just for a second. Then she walked past me to the fridge like I wasn't even there. I watched her open the blender, dump in her ingredients. No words. No tension from her. Like I wasn't her husband. Just another object in the house she no longer needed to clean around. "So," I said, "is he from accounting or marketing?" The blender stopped before it started. Her hand froze on the lid. "Excuse me? The guy from yesterday. Josh, you said he's from work. I'm just wondering which department you're screwing around in these days." She turned slowly, like she'd been rehearsing this in her head. "You're not seriously jealous." "Oh, I'm not jealous," I said. "I'm just finally curious. Big difference." She smirked. Not smiled, smirked. Like I was the annoying kid at the back of class asking too many questions. "Jason," she said, using that slow, condescending tone you reserve for people you think are beneath you. You're overreacting. Josh and I are friends. Nothing happened. And if I checked your messages? You don't have the right. Then unlock your phone. She walked away. I followed her down the hallway, not yelling, not touching, just matching her pace like a ghost. You know what bothers me most? Not that you're lying, I expected that. It's how lazy your lies are now. Like you're not even trying. She stopped at the base of the stairs, turned to face me with a fire I hadn't seen in years. You want the truth? She said, voice shaking, not with guilt, with anger. Fine. I'm done with this marriage. And just like that, it came out. No warning. No build-up. Not a fight. A decision. Dropped in my lap like trash on the sidewalk. I smiled. Not to provoke her. Not to be petty. It just came naturally. The words settled in my bones like a key clicking into a lock that had been jammed for too long. Fine by me. That's all I said. She stared at me like she hadn't expected that. Like she was hoping for tears, rage, some big emotional explosion. Instead, I walked past her, calm, silent, headed to the garage. By that afternoon, I had signed a lease. By that evening, I had a plan. And 3 weeks later, when she finally asked why I wasn't fighting to fix things, I told her I'd accepted it. That I'd found peace in the chaos she'd left behind. She didn't like that answer. It made her restless. Then, exactly 1 month after she told me she was done, she walked into my new place uninvited, like she still had a right to. And she froze. Because sitting across from me at the kitchen table was a woman she never expected to see again. She didn't speak right away. Just stood in the doorway like she'd been smacked in the face by the ghost of a decision she forgot she made. I stayed in my seat. Calm. Comfortable. Coffee in hand. Across from me sat Alina, that Alina, her old college roommate. The one she used to get drunk with, travel with, whisper secrets to when she thought I wasn't listening. The one she suddenly stopped talking about 3 years ago, right after their friendship fizzled out, or so she claimed. Except here she was, sitting across from me in my new kitchen, legs crossed, sipping espresso like we did this every Sunday. My wife, or whatever she was at that point, blinked at her. Then at me. Then back at her. Alina smiled, not unkindly. Just, knowingly. I thought you moved to Denver, my wife finally managed. I did, Alina said. But some people are worth flying back for. That sentence hit the floor like a dropped plate. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice steady. Funny thing, really. We bumped into each other downtown a few weeks ago. Had a drink. Talked about the past. Some stories came up. She didn't say anything, but I saw it, the flicker in her eyes. The one that said she suddenly remembered the stories she used to tell. The lies she wove years ago that were now circling back like hungry dogs. Alina didn't miss a beat. She set her cup down and looked my wife straight in the face. You know, I always wondered why you ghosted me. We were close. Really close. Then one day, poof, gone. You even blocked me. Thought I said something wrong. But turns out Jason here filled in some blanks. I added, she told me you were toxic. Said you made a pass at her. That you were obsessed. The color drained from her face. That's not true. Alina raised an eyebrow. Then why did you cut me out the week after I got engaged? Silence. And there it was. The room turned thick. Like air turned to syrup. And she looked between us, calculating, trying to decide whether to attack, deny, or pretend this wasn't happening. I saw her lips twitch, her mind racing. You're pathetic, she finally spat at me. What, you called her to get back at me? Using my ex-friend as some twisted revenge date? I smiled again. Not out of cruelty. Out of clarity. No, I called her because I realized something. You don't deserve people who care about you. You collect them. Use them. Burn them out. Then paint them crazy when they stop letting you. Alina stood up, grabbed her coat. He didn't call me, by the way. Called him. Saw his name pop up on LinkedIn. Thought, hey, maybe he's finally free. My wife laughed. Bitter, sharp. You two deserve each other. So much bitterness in one room. And then she left. No slamming doors. No parting words. Just gone. The silence that followed felt cleaner than anything I'd felt in years. The next day, she sent me a message. Not a call. Not a face-to-face. A message. Like we were some distant acquaintances and not two people who shared a bed, a mortgage, and 7 years of memories she treated like disposable dinnerware. It said, "You're disgusting. Enjoy playing house with my leftovers. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I put my phone down and went back to the conversation I was having. A real one, not built on manipulation or venom. Alina didn't even ask what it said. She could tell by the look on my face that it wasn't worth repeating. That was the thing about her. She didn't dig where it hurt just to satisfy curiosity. She let silence do the work, and somehow that healed more than any forced heart-to-heart. By evening, the message was deleted. Then came another one. You moved on quick. Guess I never meant much. There it was, the switch. The psychological pendulum swing from anger to guilt-tripping. She couldn't handle the idea that I wasn't sitting in my new apartment, crying into my laundry basket, begging for one last chance. She'd expected rage, maybe even begging. Instead, she got quiet, controlled detachment. And that scared her more than anything. So she tried a new angle. 2 days later, I saw her car in the visitor parking lot. She hadn't even told me she was coming. Just showed up like she still had a passcode to my life. I didn't open the door. I let her knock again. And then, finally, she messaged me again. Seriously? You're not even going to talk to me? I opened it, left it on read. It took her another 2 hours to leave. She circled the building once, sat in her car, waited, then drove off. But she wasn't done. The next morning, she showed up at my old workplace. My former manager texted me mid-lunch, your ex was here. Said she left her wedding ring in your desk? We both know you never took it off. No, I didn't. Not once. Even when she was out doing God knows what with Josh from whatever. I called her that night. Not to plead. Not to yell. Just to set the line. Don't come to my job again, I said. You embarrass me, she snapped. Do you even realize what people are saying? They're saying what you gave them to say. You cheated, then shouted your way out of the marriage. I just walked away. You don't get to control how people react to that. You're still married to me, she hissed. No. I was married to an idea of you. That person doesn't exist anymore. There was a pause and it was long. Like she wanted to scream but realized it wouldn't land. I made mistakes, she said suddenly, like the words were strangling her. But you're acting like you were perfect. No, I wasn't perfect, I said. I was just loyal, which, I guess, is a lot harder to find than I thought. She hung up. I looked around my apartment. It was small, quiet, barely decorated, but it felt like freedom. And the next time she messaged me, it wasn't insults. It was a photo of a note I'd written her years ago, the kind people frame. My handwriting, telling her she was my safe place. She captioned it, "You really meant this?" And I realized right then, she missed the comfort, not the love, not me, just the safety of knowing someone would always catch her, no matter how far she jumped. But I wasn't standing there anymore. It was a Thursday afternoon when her sister called me. That alone told me things had shifted. Danielle and I were never close, not enemies, but never more than polite. She'd always kept a neutral stance, one of those stay out of people's marriages types. But now she was calling me directly, and her voice was low, almost embarrassed. She's not doing great, she said. I think she thought you'd come back by now. I didn't respond right away. There was nothing to say. I wasn't going back. Not now. Not ever. But it was fascinating. The way she'd spent years emotionally starving me, treating me like the background noise of her life, and now she was unraveling because I had the audacity to heal without her. She told Mom you left her for Alina, Danielle added. That you had something going on behind her back the whole time. There it was. The story pivot. She couldn't be the villain in her own narrative, so she rewrote me into it. The faithful husband who was suddenly the cheater, the traitor, the one who moved on too fast with a woman from her past, no less. I didn't cheat, I said flatly. I know, Danielle replied. We all know. She's just in denial. She thought you'd fight harder. That line stuck with me. She thought I'd fight harder. Like the emotional whiplash she'd dealt me wasn't enough. Like her blatant disinterest, her backyard flirtation, her message history with Josh, and her proud declaration that she was done with this marriage, all that was supposed to be a test? A challenge I was meant to rise to? It wasn't a test. It was a fire she set with her own hands. And when the smoke got in her lungs, she looked around for me to fix it. But I'd already walked out of the building. That weekend, she tried again. This time, she didn't knock. She waited. I came back from the gym, and she was sitting on the steps outside my apartment building, sunglasses on, hair tied back, no makeup. She looked smaller. Not physically, something in her posture like the edge had dulled. "Can we talk?" she asked. "No," I said. "But you can speak. I'll listen." She flinched just slightly. "I didn't sleep with him." I didn't respond. "I swear," she added. "It wasn't like that. It wasn't physical. And that's supposed to matter?" She looked at me then. Really looked. For once, I saw confusion in her face. Not because she didn't understand what she'd done, but because she'd never considered emotional betrayal to be real betrayal. To her, everything had to be physical to count. Like the thousands of little cuts didn't matter if there wasn't a final blow. I sat beside her, but I didn't look at her. "You used to talk to him the way you used to talk to me," I said quietly. "You shared things. Secrets. Laughter. That dress you wore when I caught you with him? You used to wear that on our anniversaries. You knew what you were doing." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I didn't think you'd notice." That shattered something in me. Not from pain, from realization. She thought I wasn't even looking anymore. "You know what the worst part is?" I asked. "You didn't cheat because you were lonely. Or hurt. Or angry. You did it because you wanted to see if you could. You were bored. You wanted to feel powerful." She didn't deny it. She just said, "Can we start over?" And I laughed. I couldn't help it. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't mocking. It was disbelief. "No," I said. "We're not a movie. There's no scene after the credits. You lit a match and now you're standing in the ashes asking if we can rewind." She stood slowly and walked away without another word. That night I blocked her number. Not because I was angry. Because I was finally done pretending she still had access to my peace. It didn't take long after I blocked her. 2 days later, my inbox lit up, not texts, but emails. The last frontier. Subject lines like, "Can we talk like adults? You're being cruel. I deserve closure." Closure. The same word people use when they want to say, "I want to be heard, but I'm not ready to hear you." I didn't open them. I didn't need to. The subject lines were enough to tell me she wasn't reaching out to make peace. She was reaching out to rewrite the ending. But then it escalated. I got a call from a mutual friend, Evan. We hadn't spoken in months. Not since things first started going sour. He'd always stayed neutral. Until now. "Hey," he said. "Look, I don't want to get involved, but she's telling people you manipulated her. That you were emotionally abusive. That you used Alina to punish her." I stayed silent. "She's saying she left because you were cold, distant, and that when she tried to fix things, you iced her out." That was when I realized this wasn't about healing. She was rebranding. She couldn't stand that she lost control of the narrative. So she did what she always did when the truth got too loud. She rewrote the script and handed it out to whoever would listen. But here's the problem with that: I kept receipts. Every message. Every passive-aggressive jab. Every late night she came home from work with no explanation. I never used them against her, but I had them. And when I showed a few to the right people, quietly, privately, just to stop the bleeding, the phone calls stopped. People started realizing. She'd lost control of the story. That's when she turned to guilt again. Her last weapon. One night, I checked my inbox and saw another email from her. Just one line in the preview: "You really think I'm the villain?" And for the first time, I opened it. Just to see what version of events she was selling now. It was long. Pages of half-apologies and whataboutisms. Things like, "I never meant to hurt you. I was in a bad place mentally. You never made me feel wanted anymore. You always looked at me like I disappointed you." Not once did she say she was sorry without following it with "but you." So I did the one thing I hadn't done yet. I replied. I wrote, "You didn't become the villain. You just stopped pretending to be the victim." Then I archived the conversation and blocked her email too. By the end of that week, she showed up at Alina's bookstore. Yeah, Alina owned a bookstore. Tiny spot near downtown. She kept it quiet, mostly friends and locals. I never thought she'd go there, but she did. Walked in, sunglasses on, tone cold. Alina told me the story later. She stood in the doorway like she was about to deliver a final monologue, like some movie scene. Then she looked at me and said, "You were always waiting, weren't you?" "And what did you say?" I asked. I said, "I waited until he was free. You're the one who left the door open." I smiled when she told me that, because it was true, and it stung her more than anything I ever could have said. A week later, the silence was shattered again. Not by her, but by her mother. Yeah. That one hit me sideways. A woman who once called me the best thing that ever happened to her daughter was now on the phone with me, trying to mediate. That was the word she used. Mediate, as if this was a business dispute and not the aftermath of a woman lighting her marriage on fire and then blaming the smoke on everyone else. I just think, her mom said gently, that if you could sit down and talk things through, maybe without outside interference, I repeated. "You mean Alina?" A pause. "Well, I'm sure that's confusing for everyone." There it was again. Not once acknowledging what her daughter did. Just subtle, quiet attempts to guilt me into the role of the heartless deserter. The man who gave up. Not the man who endured months of emotional starvation and gaslighting before choosing self-respect over chaos. So I told her what no one else had. She left, I said. She flirted in our backyard, right in front of me. She told me the marriage was over. I didn't fight her. That's all that happened. Everything else is the story she's telling because it hurts less than the truth. Her mom sighed, not out of shock, but exhaustion. "I didn't know about the backyard," she murmured. "She didn't tell you about Josh?" "She told me you had someone else. After she told me she was done. Not before." Silence. And that's when I realized her mom knew. Maybe not every detail, but enough. Enough to know her daughter had destroyed something good and couldn't find a way to live with that truth. So she tried to outsource the blame. "She's not doing well," her mother said quietly. "She's lost weight. Can't sleep. She won't talk to anyone. She didn't want me when she had me," I said. "She only wants the version of me she can't have anymore." The conversation ended there. Cordial. Hollow. I hung up, feeling nothing. Not pride. Not vindication. Just clarity. It was all unraveling for her. She was trying every door, knocking on every wall, but nothing was opening anymore. Then came the twist. That weekend, I went to a mutual friend's baby shower. I hadn't planned on going. I knew she'd be there, but Alina encouraged me. Said I shouldn't keep avoiding places just because she might walk into them. So I went, and she did walk in. Late, loud, dressed like she wanted everyone to remember she still knew how to turn heads. Except, nobody was really looking. People were polite, reserved. Conversations quieted when she got close. And then she saw me, standing beside Alina, laughing with two of our friends. I didn't flinch, didn't look away. I met her eyes and gave her nothing. Not anger, not hate, not interest, just absence. That was the moment she cracked. She made a scene. Not loud, subtle. The kind that gets under your skin. She walked over, said hi to our friends, then looked at Alina and said with sugar-dipped venom, "So are you two, like, official now? Or is he just working through his trauma?" Alina didn't flinch. "If he has trauma, it's because he lived through you." The silence around us was stunning. One of those moments where no one breathes. My ex-wife, almost blinked like she'd just been slapped. Then she laughed, loud, awkward, and said, "Well, good luck. I'm sure it'll be very different this time." She walked away without another word. Nobody followed her. And for the first time, I saw her not as the woman who wrecked my life, but as a woman who wrecked her own. It was a Monday morning when the final cracks started to show. Evan messaged me again, this time with a screenshot. A post from her private Instagram account, the one she only let real friends follow. A black and white photo of our wedding bands side by side on a countertop. Captioned, "Some people give up too easily. Some people were never really in it." That was her last card, public martyrdom. Framing herself as the woman abandoned by a man who just didn't try hard enough. No mention of Josh. No mention of backyard betrayals or the slow emotional bleed-out she orchestrated for years. Just a romanticized image of heartbreak perfectly filtered for sympathy. But she wasn't posting for friends. She was posting for damage control. Because the truth was already spreading. Quietly, without my help. A few people she'd vented to had started comparing stories. One of them, Megan, another mutual friend, reached out to me directly. "She told me you were sleeping with Alina behind her back for years," she said. "Said you emotionally manipulated her, made her feel like she was crazy." But then I saw the texts. The ones where she laughed about testing you. About how easy it was to lie when you were tired after work. Yeah. Megan had screenshots. Apparently, in one of her weak moments, or maybe just a proud one, she'd bragged to Megan in a private DM about how she'd gaslight me into thinking I was the one withdrawing. Said it was too easy. Said, and I quote, "He's so desperate to be the good guy. I could probably burn the house down and he'd apologize for not grabbing the extinguisher. That did it." Megan told me she'd cut contact with her. She wasn't alone. 3 others quietly unfollowed. One even messaged me to say, "You deserved better. We all just didn't want to get involved." But now people were. Not out of loyalty, out of disgust. They'd watched her play the victim in public while stabbing truth in private. And eventually it caught up to her. The next post she made? A selfie, no caption, just her looking pale and tired. Comments full of support. But no one she used to be close with commented. Not one. Just strangers. Strangers and a few new friendships she'd curated in the fallout. And then came the fallout at work. Danielle called again. She didn't sound sympathetic this time, just blunt. "She's in trouble. HR found out about Josh." I sat up. "She told them you were abusive. That's why she leaned on a coworker. But apparently someone reported that he used to pick her up after hours when you were still married. They're investigating." I didn't say a word. Just listened. "She's spiraling," Danielle said. "She's trying to make it about her mental health now. Says she was under pressure, confused, manipulated. But it's not working. People are done giving her a pass." There it was, the collapse. Her web of stories unraveling, thread by thread. The truth surfacing, not because I forced it to, but because she kept pulling at it until there was nothing left. And then, one night, just before midnight, I got a final email. No subject. No intro. Just one sentence. "You destroyed me." I stared at it for a long time. Then replied, "No. You destroyed yourself." I just stepped aside. I didn't reply to her again after that last message. Not once. Not when she emailed a week later, claiming she finally understood everything. Not when she begged for 5 minutes, just 5, to say what she couldn't before. Not even when she sent a photo of our dog, the one she didn't fight to keep when she walked out, with the words, "He still waits by the door." She was trying to dig into the past like there was still something left buried that could save her. But what she didn't realize was I had already done the burial. Grieved the version of her that once loved me. That version had died long before the affair, long before the backyard, long before Josh ever knew her name. I didn't need to keep staring into the grave. So I started rebuilding. Quietly. No announcements. No grand new life posts. Just slow, steady work. I repainted my apartment. Got rid of every object that held the weight of her memory, the blanket she picked out, the wine glasses from our anniversary trip, that stupid decorative bowl she insisted tied the room together. I donated it all. What couldn't be donated I trashed. With every box I carried out, it felt like I was making room for something real again. Alina never pushed. Never rushed me to get over it. She let me unpack the damage on my own terms, and when I wanted company, she was there. When I needed silence, she gave it. It wasn't perfect, we weren't perfect, but it was honest. And honest felt like oxygen after years of breathing smog. Funny thing happened during all of this, people started reaching out. Not to gossip, but to reconnect. People I hadn't seen in years. Old coworkers, college friends, even my younger brother who kept his distance during the storm because, in his words, I didn't know who you were with her anymore. Turns out I hadn't been me for a long time. I'd been a filtered version, muted, hesitant, always watching my words like they might be used against me later. But now, I laughed louder, spoke freely. The tension I thought was just being an adult was gone. And in its place was something I hadn't felt in years. Ease. And while I was rebuilding, she was vanishing. Danielle stopped updating me. Her mother stopped calling. Her name stopped coming up in circles. Even online, she went quiet. Deleted most of her posts. Made her profile private. She'd gone from the center of drama to a footnote. Last I heard, Josh had distanced himself too. Once HR wrapped up their investigation and he realized her chaos didn't stop at home. That was the thing about her. People thought she was magnetic, that her sharpness was confidence. But over time, it became clear. She was only magnetic if you were insecure. The second you started to love yourself, her charm cracked. She didn't know how to exist in spaces where people held boundaries. And I had finally learned how to build mine high, firm, and permanent. She became a lesson, not a threat. And the man she thought she'd left broken? He was already halfway into a life she couldn't even imagine. It's been a year. 12 months since she stood in my living room, wearing that smug, flat expression, tossing out, "I'm done with this marriage," like it was her closing argument. And 12 months since I smiled and said, "Fine by me," like it cost me nothing. When in truth, it cost me everything I thought I'd built. But it also gave me everything I hadn't realized I was missing. People think healing is loud, that it comes with mantras and therapy breakthroughs and shouting "I deserve better" into the mirror. But the truth is, it's quiet. It sneaks in one normal Tuesday morning when you're making coffee and suddenly realize you didn't think about her at all yesterday. It's noticing that you no longer expect a lie when someone answers a question. It's no longer scanning someone's face to measure the temperature of your own emotions. That's what Alina gave me. Not drama, not grand gestures, just room to breathe. And she never once asked me to make comparisons. Never looked for reassurance that she was better than her. She just loved me as I was, scarred, wiser, still cautious, but present. She met me where I stood, not where I used to be. That's a rare thing. We were sitting on the balcony of her bookstore apartment one night, the city low and orange beneath us, when she asked me, if she ever apologized for real, would it matter? I thought about it. And not briefly. I really sat in that question. No, I finally said, because it would be too late. The apology would be a request to step back into a version of myself I've already outgrown. That was the truth. Even if she came to my door tomorrow, barefaced, vulnerable, bleeding with remorse, it wouldn't move me. Because the man who would have answered that door a year ago, he's gone. He died the night she looked me in the eyes and expected me to beg to stay in a burning house. And you know the strangest part? I don't hate her. I don't feel anything when I think about her now. Not rage, not sadness, not love, just clarity. Like the way you feel when a fog lifts and you finally see the landscape for what it really is. Her chaos isn't my responsibility anymore. Her narrative? Let her have it. I've got peace. I've got love. I've got myself back. And if you're someone reading this because you're in that same storm, if you're wondering whether it's worth it to leave, to risk being alone, to stop begging for the bare minimum, let me say this clearly, there's nothing lonelier than being ignored by someone you love. Nothing more suffocating than staying loyal to someone who's already halfway out the door. Choose you. Walk out of the fire. Let it burn behind you. And one day you'll smile not because it didn't hurt, but because it led you here. Alive. Whole. Free.